Good morning, guys. Welcome back to another video breakdown of my daily Python practice. I hope you're having a great Thursday. Today I am on Data and Motions week 11 coding questions. So let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, it's actually 3 coding questions for today. So we'll get started doing one by one, and then at the end we'll test all 3 to make sure they're working correctly. So let's get started on problem 1. Okay, so problem 1 is to write 2 functions. The first one is called toInt, which is a function that converts a string to an integer. And the second function is toString, which is a function to convert an integer to a string. So let's get started on this one. Let's start declaring our functions first, and then we'll come in and fill in the logic. So the first one, we're going to keep the same name. We'll just name it to_int. And then for the parameter, we're going to put a string in there because it's going to take that string and then convert that to an integer. So inside the parameters here, we'll just call it a_string because it's going to take in a string. And then we'll add that pass here and we'll declare the second function they told us, which was called toString. So to_string. And if you notice, that one is going to take an integer and convert it to a string. So in here, we're just going to say a_integer because that's what we're going to be taking in. And then under there, we'll just add that pass in and come back and fill in that logic. If my computer quick is slow. Okay, so now that we declare our 2 functions, let's go ahead and add the logic. So for the first one, it's going to take that string and convert it to an integer. So we're simply going to return int of the string. So we'll say int, and then here we'll say a_string, and that's about it. Integer is just going to take it and convert it to type string. So that one is complete, and then we'll come down here and we'll do this one, which we're going to return the opposite. So we're going to take the integer and we want that to be a string. So we'll say string, and then inside there we're going to pass in a_int. If my computer quit acting slow, let's just type it in there. Oh, there it is. All right. So those are as simple as that. And like I said, at the end, we'll come back and test it and make sure that one's working. So now let's move on to problem 2, which is to create a function that takes a number as its only argument and returns true if it is less than or equal to 0, otherwise false. So as you see, we're going to be returning a Boolean. So let's go ahead and get started there. So we're going to, of course, define our function first. So we'll just call it check because we're checking the number to see. And then it's going to take in, let's just say some_integer. Going to take in some number. And let's start the logic. So it returns true if it is less than or equal to 0. So return whether that number. So return some integer. Return true if it's less than or equal. Less than or equal to 0. So essentially what it's doing is it's just checking to see whether the integer that is passed is less than or equal to 0. So that return is going to be true if it is less than or equal to 0, or it's going to be false. So that takes care of that one. So let's keep moving on to the bonus one here. And the bonus one states to create a function that takes 2 number strings and returns their sum as a string. So you notice this one, we're going to have 2 parameters because it's taking in 2 numbers. So it's going to look a little bit different than what our parameters look like in the first 3. So let's go ahead and define this function. So we'll say define. We can name it string_sum. And then for the parameters, we're going to say string, maybe string 1 and string 2. And now let's go ahead and fill in that logic. So you can't really add two strings together unless you convert them to an integer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return, we're going to convert those to integers. So int of string 1, and then we're going to say plus the converted value of string 2. So that'll give us the sum, but the sum will come back as an integer. So we want to convert that back to a string. So what we'll do is we'll enclose that sum into that string function, and that'll convert it back into a string. So let's see. I think that'll work. I'm going to try it now and let you see what happens. If not, we'll think of something else. So we're going to return the string value of those two numbers. Okay. So now let's go ahead and test these functions down here. Let's just create a main here. Let's put our pass there to come back and fill that in. And then down here, we'll just call that main. Okay. So first thing we would like to do, let's go ahead and test the problem number 1 that we create at the top. So let's make a list and just pass all our tests in there. And at the bottom, we'll just print each test on a separate line. Okay. And T. Okay. So let's go ahead and call our first function, which is toInt. And as you know, we're going to pass it a string. So let's say toInt. And inside of here, we'll pass it a string. Let's say string of 3. So we'll pass it that string 3 to test that one. Oh, not that. I'm going to say wrong thing. I'm tripping. Okay. So that'll test our first function, and then let's call the second function, which is toString, and we could just pass in another number. So we'll say 2_string, and that one takes an integer. So let's give it the integer 6 to test that one. And then what's next? We have to test problem number 2, which is going to check whether the number is less than or equal to 0. So let's go ahead and call that one. So we'll say check. And then we'll pass in, let's just do a -1 to see if we'll get true. And then let's call in check and pass it a 3 to see if we'll get false. All right. And we also have to pass. We also have to test string. I put sun. So string sun, and let's see if that'll work correctly as far as our return value. So let's call that one as well. String sun. And that takes in 2 strings. So we'll pass it 6. And we'll pass it 2. And we'll see what we get from there. And we make this look a little better. Okay. So we have our test cases here we made on the fly. And now we have to test and make sure they are working correctly. Our code. All right. So you see here we passed in an integer of 3. It returned 3. To string return 6. I probably have to show you the type because with this, you're not really seeing what type it is. You're just seeing the actual numbers. So what I have to do is I'll probably have to do the type of that just to show you guys what data type is returning as. And then if we see a check with this one, it's returning true because with that function, it was returning if the number was less than or equal to 0, and -1 is less than or equal to 0. And you see we passed it 3, it's returning false because 3 is not less than or equal to 0. And then down here at the bottom, we're returning 8, and that is because we're taking these 2 strings here. After we convert them to integers, we're adding them. And then from there, it's converting the value, which is 8, back into a string. Which was with that, I would have to show you the type for that. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, guys. So I just researched it, and it's exactly type. So we're going to print T, and then we're just going to print the type of T to make sure those types are correct. Type and T. So let's go ahead and run this again so we can double check that those types are correct. Okay. So let's have a look at this. Let me pull it up a little bit more. Okay. So let's go back up to our functions here. So the first function was to accept that string and turn it into an integer. And as you can see here, we passed in that string 3. And it did what it was supposed to. It took that string of 3 and turned it into an integer. And then the one under, we gave it an integer of 6, and it was to convert that into a string. So as you see here, it took that 6 and returned the string because it is of type class string. And then down here, it wasn't really a question of whether the Boolean was correct because we knew it was supposed to return Boolean, so we can skip that one. But for the last one, for 8, it was to take the sum of 2 strings, calculate that sum, and then turn it back into a string. And as you can see, the 8 is indeed a string, so that was done correctly as well. So it looks like everything is working well. Let me know how you would have went about solving some of these questions. Let me know if you have any tips for me. And yeah, that was I guess a lot in one day, but they were quite simple. If you would like to, guys, you can like and subscribe to see more of my coding challenges. And other than that, everyone have a great Thursday. Thank you guys for watching, and bye bye.